Rolling.
All right. Hi. Great to be with you all again. So, since we can't be interviewed live, we're just going to interview each other here today. So, you've already shared a bit about your experience of MLK Day, but the second question is how do you, as a settler of color, connect with indigenous activists and indigenous struggles in the U.S.?
Yeah, well, for me, and I'll talk directly here. For me, part of it is where I start the narrative. Like, I used to start, like, black folks' story in relation to the nation state of the U.S. with enslavement, but growing awareness, like, now invites me to start it earlier and not with a nation state per se. Now I talk a lot more about the doctrine of discovery and how that's growing out of Western Christian supremacy thinking. And I really want to note that the first violence perpetuated against black people due to the doctrine of discovery and the colonization wasn't enslavement. Rather, it was the invasion of our indigenous communities and lands as part of the continent of Africa, the genocidal destruction of our communities, and the extraction of natural resources from their indigenous relational context through a lot of things, but especially through the kidnapping of millions and millions of people. And starting the story earlier is a reminder that we are not just the economic entity of slave, but actually we are indigenous peoples, and ripped from our belonging is part of the heartache that I carry and that we carry, and also a place where I can connect with indigenous folks across Turtle Island who, although perhaps in closer proximity to historical spaces and ways, not able to be in a relationship with those in the same way. So the elimination of indigeneity for those of us who were trafficked, and for the most part our inability to have a chance to recover that, is an open wound. And across the Atlantic, across the continent of Africa, the imposition of foreign rule and the creation of class structures that reproduce unequal social relationships have also made it difficult to remain connected to rooted practices and life ways and to participate coherently in the broader world. However, of course, just like across Turtle Island and Abiyajala, like so many efforts across the African continent continue for self-determination and for rerouting and connection. So learning from the space of Kenya that we're in right now and the ways that others are thinking has been really meaningful and nourishing. Yeah. And so what about you, Jonathan? Or did you want to respond to that? Yeah. How do you stay connected as someone with ancestries from multiple lineages with indigenous struggles in the U.S. and Canada?
Yeah. So my mixed lineage is of a white Mennonite side and a Palestinian side, and in that mixture, in the work that I do, it's as a Palestinian challenging the ways that colonial Christianity has affected Palestine, particularly the ways that Christian Zionism and theologies of extraction and exploitation and chosenness of one above another, that hierarchy of belonging and hierarchy of love or humanity, how destructive that has been and continues to be. And that's something that I think connects the Palestinian struggle with indigenous struggles in the U.S. as well. So recognizing the way that the doctrine of discovery put white Europeans above native peoples, above black people, in the same way that Christian Zionism puts Europeans above Palestinians, and continues those exploitative forms of theology, those racist forms of theology, really. And so with my work with Friends of Sabeel North America, which supports Palestinian liberation theology and that movement both in Palestine and in the U.S., recognizing can Christianity be something besides the religion of empire, besides a colonial religion? Like, what might that look like? And of course, as a Palestinian, I say, what does Christianity look like as an indigenous tradition? What does Christianity look like when it's practiced in the place where it was founded? And there's something, so a lot of times, like, we look back to the early church and what they did, but what was the culture that surrounded that as well? And something that amazes me as also a Mennonite and someone who sees pacifism as a central part of living out the Christian faith, in the early 2000s, Palestinian Christians from all the different denominations that have now been created, that are there, came together to give a word to the church around the world. This was called the Kairos document. And they said, we must resist the injustice that's happening to us. But they also said, we will resist nonviolently. And the fact that that was, I heard one person say, might be the first time in Christian history that all the Christians of a place rejected violence. And I said, actually, it's the second. You have Christianity in the first century